I want to welcome you to the Pro Mindset Podcast. The Pro Mindset Podcast is all about diving into the headspace that results in championship performance. High-performing athletes, winners, have this mental flow and have a positive headspace for their performances and success. Join me, Craig Domann, sports attorney and NFL agent, on this podcast. I will interview pro athletes, college athletes, football coaches, and sports personalities. Together, we can discover how you can get in the flow and have your own pro mindset. Hey, I want to welcome a special guest to our Pro Mindset podcast today. His name is Joe Parker Jr. Joe Parker Jr. is a wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans. He's a rookie. He just finished up at Tennessee Chattanooga last fall. Went through the draft evaluation process this spring, went through the draft, and was signed by the Tennessee Titans, and now has an opportunity to make their 53 or 63. So today we're going to talk about Joe's mindset as he goes into the draft evaluation process. We're going to dissect an offensive play and how a wide receiver attacks it. We're also going to talk a lot about how he approaches his opportunity in the NFL. There's a lot of young men that would trade places with Joe to have the opportunity to compete for a roster spot in the NFL. He has one of those golden tickets, and how is he going to maximize that opportunity? Without further ado, let's welcome Joe. Okay, first let's start out with just kind of give me an overview of your history. Did you end up winning state at Cherry Creek?
I did. Yep,
Beat Valor?
Beat Valor, yeah.
So kind of walk us through your football beginnings leading up to where you are now.
Yeah, started out Little League just like everybody else. Was a quarterback. Actually broke my arm and had a cast on it. Couldn't take any snaps, so I just run down the field and catch the ball with my cast. And kind of the rest is history. Played at Cherry Creek for Dave Logan. Ended up winning the state my senior year. And then early enrolled in Wyoming. Started there my freshman year and sophomore year. And then transferred to Chattanooga. Finished out there. Wide receiver, punt return, kick return. Kind of tried to do a lot of things there.
Awesome. When you went to college, if I remember correctly, you got an opportunity to play your freshman year. How many catches did you have, and how were you able to put yourself in a position to be on the field as a very young receiver your freshman season?
Don't quote me. I think it was like 9 catches, nothing major. But the biggest thing getting there early and playing as a true freshman was learning the playbook, being able to earn the coach's trust, earn the quarterback's trust, and everything right away. Showing that I can take in information and apply it on the field. That I didn't just learn in the classroom and it didn't translate. Basically, just knowing what to do, knowing where to be and when to be there, and how everything worked kind of put me ahead of the game.
What would be the factor or the trait that you would say that is different about you today than when you came out of high school? How have you grown the most in college?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the mental part of the game, it's so different from high school. High school, it's kind of, dummied down. You're just kind of running around, playing football with your friends. And, now, come where I came from, it's such a sophisticated offense at Chattanooga and, such a pro-style deal. It's really, detailed. Details matter, splits matter, route concepts matter. What type of release you get matters. So, if you're running a basic and the opposite guy's running a shallow, you got to get an outside release so he doesn't see the shallow coming from the other side. Just really detailed. The football IQ that I've gained just being around football longer and being in such a pro program, which really helped me.
When NFL scouts evaluate players, they're looking at off the field character, they're looking at on the field performance, they're looking at measurables, they're seeing if you fit in a box. They go to the combine, and one of the biggest parts of the combine is the medical. And how do you fit in the box? And that's where you get an opportunity as a scout or a coach to see a guy from the West Coast, the East Coast, and somewhere in between, side by side, doing the same drills. What is it that you would like NFL scouts to know that makes you an attractive prospect for their organization?
I'm just an extremely savvy football player. I understand. I'm very, smart when it comes to football. I understand leverages, coverages, splitting the field in half, quarters, whatever. They may do. And, within that, I have a great toolbox that I've developed over the years, having 8 receivers coaches, 9 receivers coaches in college, that I've learned how to, react fast to what defenders are doing to me, and be able to use my toolbox without thinking too much and playing fast still. So I'm able to dissect what they're doing, and then no matter if I go inside or outside, or they force me inside or outside, I'm able to get open based on my toolbox that I have naturally without feeling so mentally shut down, because I've done it for so long and I've had so much opportunity to do it that I can just play fast.
So you have a football toolbox of tricks and skills and experiences and coaching. What do you feel like is your favorite tool?
Ooh, my favorite tool? I think about just using your body control, and using your eyes, staring at the inside shoulder of the DB and knowing that you're going to break out, making sure that, everything's the same. You think you're running a 9 route every time and you're staring at his inside shoulder. He thinks you're breaking in, and all of a sudden you snap it off real quick, use your body control and get out of it the other way before he can even realize what's going on.
Okay. How do you, like when you line up, and sometimes the play call obviously is a pass play, and that's when you're the most excited, and you've got a guy that's in press man. How do you attack that press man coverage?
Big thing is, reacting. First you gotta dissect, man coverage, he's outside leverage, where am I going? What's my plan? If I, let's say I'm running a slant route and I want to win inside. I gotta know that, but I gotta also be ready that, if he jumps inside and takes it away, okay, now I got an outside release. Can I still do it? Yeah, I'm gonna diamond release him, and I'm gonna throw him by at the top and work negative and catch the ball. You just gotta have a plan, and you gotta be able to execute that plan at a high level. So
conversely, how do you attack? I know zones, there's lots of different types of zones and leverages, but when you get a free release and you're running a particular route, how do you attack a zone coverage?
Zone coverage is funny, because there's tons of them. There's cover 4, cover 3, Tampa 2. There's all types of different, but you got to understand that there's always a hook player, always a flat player. There's always a deep player, no matter how many, and they all have a job. And when you're let's say I'm running a basic from the inside, which is a 12-yard square in, you got to understand to work windows. So you got to wrap around that hook player. And, if you got another backer in there, then you kind of got to sit down and be ready for the ball in the first window. And, if the quarterback's not on you yet because you're not his first read, then you got to be able to work the second window, and basically just understand that these players have obligations on the defense, and you got to fit where the blind spots are. And once you're in those blind spots, you got to be able to make a play.
Well, one of the biggest things that NFL coaches talk about is, especially for young players, they're not going to put a guy on the field until they trust him. If you're a punt returner, they got to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're going to catch the ball and make a good decision. Whether it's let the ball go, fair catch it, or take it. As a wide receiver, how do you develop trust with your wide receiver coach?
Trust is huge. It's what I did first when I got to Wyoming, and that's why I got on the field so fast. And for me, it's doing the extraordinary things, or the ordinary things in an extraordinary way. And what I mean by that is every time, he throws the ball to you, you're coming down with it. Every time he might not throw the ball to you, you're in the right place at the right time and you're open. You know where to line up, because if you don't, the coach is getting his butt ripped. And you don't want that, because then he doesn't trust you as much. So you're making him look good by being in the right place, and then you're making the quarterback look good, is where you're always open, you're coming down with the ball, and you're making his job easier because he's got tons of things to think about.
Well, I don't know if there's another position on a football field that relies upon another player more than a receiver. For you to make it happen, to do your thing, unless you're run blocking, you need to have a great connection with the quarterback. If you're an offensive lineman, not so much. Mm-hmm. So as a receiver, how do you develop trust with your quarterback? And when you go to the NFL, you may have 4 of them in camp. And when you get into the preseason, you don't know which one you're going to be catching the ball from. So what's your plan to develop trust with 4 different quarterbacks?
I think it just goes to the same thing. You can't really worry about who's throwing the ball to you. You got to be a good teammate to everybody. You always got to be there making plays, helping people out. If they have questions or they need help with something, you got to extend a hand. And basically, you got to do your job. And if you do your job and you make his job easier, he's going to like you no matter whether it's the first string or the 4th string. And if you catch the ball, that's one less thing they have to worry about. All they got to worry about is putting it somewhere near you, and if you get the job done, then they're happy just like you are.
when it comes to the NFL, things go a lot faster than they do in college. Just like college, the plays, the installation, the adjustments, everything kind of happens a little bit faster. There's more things to learn. The playbook's a little bit thicker the higher you go up. What type of learner are you? Are you a visual learner? Are you a rep guy? Are you a guy that needs to study a playbook? What is your style, and how do you make sure that you learn the playbook so that when you go out to practice on an install day, you know what you're supposed to do?
I'm definitely a visual learner. I like seeing the play on the board, but I'm a whole picture guy, so I'm a big picture guy. I like understanding the big play. I don't really understand just what the H is doing, or the Z, or the X, or the Y, or the F. I like understanding what everybody's doing and why they're doing it. The big thing is the why. So I'll go back to the cross, the basic with the shallow coming under it. Let's say the guy's outside leverage, it's easy for me to go inside, but as soon as I slip inside, the guy sees the shallow come in, and all of a sudden it's either a bang bang play, I'm getting the guy put in the hospital, or it's a pick. So I got to understand, why do I need an outside release? What's the importance of it? And learn the big picture, and what everybody's doing helps you when things are sugar coated and you're motioning now and you're starting over here and going there. Or let's say you're the F in this formation, but you're the H in this formation, and now you're like, okay, well, where is it? Well, if you can draw the play in your head as a whole, then you don't really have to worry about it. It doesn't really slow you down. You kind of know what everybody's doing, so you're like, okay, I'm here, this is what I'm doing. It doesn't really matter what letter you are, it doesn't matter what you just where you are, and you know what you're doing.
There's a lot more to playing receiver than most fans think.
Yeah, there's a ton. You got to understand leverages, you got to understand routes, concepts, you got to understand timing, progressions. You got to be quarterback friendly with, coming negative to the ball. You got to understand that, that guy in front of you, his job is to stop you, and it's basically a one-on-one boxing match every single round if it's man coverage. He's getting paid a lot of money, he's athletic, and he knows what he has to do. But you know what you're doing, and it's just a ongoing battle, no matter whether you're run blocking, your zone, running around in zone coverage, or man coverage.
Why don't you play offensive coordinator for a moment and describe for everybody your favorite play, when it's called, why you use it, and what the quarterback reads are, and what the different routes that the different receivers are running.
So I'm a big a smash cop guy, so a corner post in a smash concept. I love those moves. It's always been one of my favorite things, and something I really excelled at when I was in Chattanooga. And it helped that I had a quarterback that loved to sling the rock deep. So basically, I remember we ran against Samford. We went up early against them. Went up 17-0, and they were coming back, kind of hit a standstill on offense. And it's third down, it's 3rd and 7+. I don't remember the exact, but I remember 3rd and 7+. It's a Tampa 2 or a cover 4 coverage. Those were their two highest coverages. So we knew that we're probably going to get a Tampa 2 based on the linebacker, or the middle linebacker's depth. So we looked over, we did a hockey call, which is a dummy call. You snap it, try and get them out of their fake coverage so they show you what they're actually doing. We saw it was cover 2, so we ran the smash cop concept. And basically what it is the two safeties kind of have the deep, but you got to worry about that middle backer because he's got the middle third. So we ran smash cop, so the quarterback's thinking, okay, I'm banging the hitch fast if I have it. If the corner's sinking off or playing tight to the hitch, then I'm going to have the corner. Well, now I'm running a corner post. So what we did is we ran it. I ran 4th inside step, sold 3 to the corner, broke back to the post and kept it skinny to stay away from that mic covering that deep third. Caught the ball, and it was a good play for us. I think I had one catch for LSU for like 76 yards on it or something like that, and then this catch was another big gain. So it was one of my favorite concepts for sure.
Boy, it sounds like you should have run that play a little bit more often.
Which we did.
Being the man in high school, being a starter in college, you don't really have to stand on the sidelines as much. When you go to the NFL and you get into training camp, that's one thing I hear from my clients and from rookies is that, hey, I don't get enough reps. If coach would just give me more reps, I'd be good. How are you going to deal with going to the NFL as a rookie, and you're going to find yourself at the bottom of the depth chart starting out?
Yep.
How are you going to be successful when there's plays that are installed during OTAs that maybe you never get to run, and you get in your first preseason game, and the first passing play they call, you have never run? How are you going to be successful?
Good question. It's all about the mental part of the game. There's the mental part I told you guys about, understanding coverages and being a smart football player. But there's also about dealing with stuff like that, dealing with the pressures of, man, I'm not getting enough reps, I'm not getting enough this. Well, I take it a completely different way. What I do, I'm extremely nosy about it. The coach is coaching him up, the coach is coaching this guy up on this. I'm listening, I'm doing this, I'm taking mental reps, I'm watching what this guy's getting. If I'm behind a number one guy that's been there for years, I'm watching what he's doing. I'm taking mental reps, I'm understanding, if they're running a drive concept or a crash concept, I'm watching him, how long it takes for him to get across the field. If he's sitting down in the B to D gap, if he's, it's got man, so he's keeping on the move, if he's stair-stepping him, what the quarterback's progression is. You got to take notes on every play, even if you're not in, because, just like you said, you may get in and never run a concept before, and they might call it, and that's your one shot to make a play. And you got to be able to do it, and sometimes that's the test they're giving you. They do it on purpose. And you always got to be ready. You always got to be learning from everybody, learning what everybody's doing, and trying to get better instead of worrying about your reps.
Sounds like a winner. When you talk to receivers, a lot of guys learn how to run routes from different coaches, different ways. You've had a lot of coaches. What is the most fundamentally sound way that you've learned to run routes that allows you to get open, be where you're supposed to be?
Well, it's a big step game. So, I think we've derailed from the yards, counting yards, 12-yard curl and all that stuff. And the reason I think we've done that is because, one, you're never on the white line. You're never on the 10-yard line. Sometimes you're on the 32, the 46. It's all these types of different yard lines. And you can't count fast enough. You got to worry about your split and other things before you can do it. So, if we're running a 10-yard out, it's your third inside step or your sixth step. If you're running a 12-yard curl, it's your third inside that you're dropping off of. So you're starting your tight break on your third inside. And what doing this has allowed you to play fast no matter where you are on the field, and stayed rhythmic and in the same place all the time, so the quarterback can trust where you're going to be when you're going to be there. Building that chemistry so he knows, okay, hey, I got Joe on the right running a 12-yard curl. It's going to be a sixth step. I need to bang it now. And it creates a more comfortable level for everybody.
And you can play faster.
Oh, yeah, big part.
So let's describe for us your favorite route and why, and what you're thinking about. Let's say it's a huddle situation. What you're thinking about from the minute the play's called and you're supposed to run that route, what you're thinking. And then when you get up to the line of scrimmage and you got your split, what you're thinking. And when you see your defender and who you have to beat, the same thing, what are you thinking?
So we'll talk college field first, because obviously the numbers and the hashes are different in the NFL. But my favorite's a speed 3. It's a 10-yard out. It's third step, the third inside step. You're breaking out in a speed cut and basically trying to get to the ball before the DB does. And the best thing about it is, you run out, and based on where you're on the field, you might be in a midget split or a +2 of the numbers. And basically trying to save space before you can start the route. It's a long throw for the quarterback. They got to have some good arm strength to get it there. And you need some space. So my favorite thing is, man, it's one of those things where, it's body control. You're sprinting full speed at the guy, and all of a sudden you stick your third and you redirect right. And instead of double pounding it and, running it like a U, I have a great ability where I can just stick and redirect right away. Not lose any speed and, just kind of win like that. So when you can put pressure to make him back up and, everything looks like a 9 route, and then all of a sudden you're able to just stick and change direction, catch the ball, it's something that's very hard to cover, and it's actually one of the easier plays to run, which is why I love it so much, and an easy 10-yard gain. And, who doesn't love first downs? So,
what do you do to work on your hands? As a receiver, there's a lot of guys that are tall and fast and long, and, they can't catch the ball.
Yep.
Okay?
It's funny, there's great things like, fingertip push-ups and all that stuff, but the biggest thing about catching the ball is your eyes. Your hand-eye coordination, being able to track the ball, being able to look it all the way in. And, there's a fun thing that my high school coach taught me. It's catch, cap, lock. You catch the ball with your eyes, you cap it with your fingers, and then you lock it. You lock onto the ball with the fingers, and you tuck it away. And it's one of those things where if you can catch the ball with your eyes, then you can catch it with your hands. If you take the hands out of the equation, you can't catch the ball because nothing is going to stop it. But if you take away your eyes, you can't see the ball either, so you can't catch it. So a lot of people focus on the hands and all that stuff, but it's really your hand-eye coordination and looking the ball all the way in, being able to use your eyes to your advantage.
Speaking of eyes, What do you do like in preparation for a game the night before the game? A lot of guys visualize things, visualize successful plays, successful performance, catching the winning touchdown, beating a guy deep to, win in overtime, crazy things like that. What do you do as far as visualizing in terms of before the game, maybe even during the game, maybe even between series, and perhaps in a nanosecond before a play starts when you're at the line of scrimmage?
I'm just like everybody else. I'm visualizing scoring the winning touchdown. I'm visualizing making plays for my team. But it's all about preparation, using your eyes. So, let's say you're run blocking, you're on the outside running away from you. Your job's to take care of that one guy in the corner on you. He's pressing you. Well, instead of just taking a play off, what I may be doing is I may be trying a release on him, seeing what he does. If he's jumping inside, attacking his leverage to see if I can get him to move this way with this move or this way with this move. Basically just kind of setting him up. Okay, well, when I do this, he does this. So now when I got a fade ball, I can do this, he'll do that, and I'm going to be wide open. So just kind of staying in it, visualizing, but then also using your eyes and your reps that maybe you don't think are that important, but they really are.
So it sounds like there's almost a game within the game for you.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I'm a big fan of Doug Baldwin, and he talks about being so creative, and he's such a student of the game, coming from Stanford, an undersized guy just like me. He's so smart because he understands leverage. He understands where to attack. He did something on NFL with Patrick Peterson where he was running a route, and he understands that Patrick Peterson's a cerebral player, but so's he. So he's got his game that he's trying to play with you, and you've got your game that you're trying to play with him, and it's kind of like a chess match. And it's just it's really cool to watch and participate in because if your toolbox is bigger than his, then you're going to win.
That's good. Joe, when did you first start thinking about playing in the NFL?
I probably couldn't even tell you an age or anything. I don't think there was one age where I can say, hey, I was 7 years old and I wanted to play in the NFL. I think it's just something I've always loved. I've always wanted to do it, never wanted to stop. I've always loved football. It's been my plan A the whole time, and it's been my only plan the whole time. It's a game I love. I couldn't imagine not playing it anymore, and it's something that I enjoy working at every single day, trying to get better every single day, trying to sharpen my craft every single day. So I couldn't tell you really one. I think it's just always something I've meant to do.
Everybody that is successful has like a defining moment. They have a turning point or a pivot point where, damn, I know I can do this stuff. When did you feel like you belonged in college? Or when did you feel like from college you thought you could play in the NFL?
Probably right when I stepped on Wyoming's campus. I've always been a hard worker, and when I got there, I was making plays and, contributing right away and running great routes and, always getting open. And, it was cool to see guys that had caught tons of balls that had been there 4 years, asking me, what I was thinking when I was doing this and why I was doing it and, how did I think about that? And, when I realized that these guys were coming to me for questions even sometimes, I was like, you know what, I might be pretty good at this. I should really, think about it. And I was just like, it was never really important to me, the end. It was always the journey. You know what I mean? Just taking it day by day and getting better. But I think I started to realize, and, Coach started telling me, you can really do this if you really want to. And it was a no-brainer for me.
Well, you started at Wyoming. And, of course, every scout's going to want to know why you transferred. Yeah. So you did not redshirt. You played 2 seasons at Wyoming, and then you moved to Tennessee Chattanooga for Coach Arth. Share with everyone why you transferred.
It all started with, having so many receivers coaches, 5 in 4 semesters. That's a lot of change, and it's a lot of, bouncing around. And Wyoming's one of those jobs where, these guys were going somewhere or changing stuff. And while it was probably, looking back on it, one of my biggest assets, having so many receivers coach and learning so much, that's a tough situation to be in. So I ended up starting my first 12 games at Wyoming my freshman year. Then started the first 3 my sophomore year. Ended up new coach coming in, had his nephew on the team, guy I beat out my freshman year, and he wanted to go another direction, which was completely respectable. And I sat there, fought it all year. And then, Josh Allen being one of my best friends, my roommate since I got there, we kind of talked, and, there was rumors of him leaving and all that stuff. And, me and him, he kind of gave me some advice and talked and said, I think, I don't want you to, stay because of me or leave because of me. I want you to do what you want to do. And I thought about it, and I just kind of decided it was best if I, chase my dream somewhere else. Gotcha.
Well, it turned out pretty good. Tell me what you've learned about the NFL from Josh.
It's what everybody says. It's a business. He approaches it two different ways. You can either hate the business or you can understand the business, and you can work for it. And that's something I've really taken deep. And what he means by that is, oh man, they drafted this guy, so he's got more chances, or this or that. The only thing about the business is you understand where you are, and you understand the cards that you've been dealt. And the only thing you can do is react accordingly and play accordingly, and understand that a guy like me, when he gets his shot, he's going to take that and he's going to swing full force and hit the ball as far as he can. And that's just something that I've learned from him, and grateful for him for. And it just is what it is.
Joe, the NFL is becoming less and less about measurables. There was a time when the analytics people were looking for the perfect measurables for every position. I mean, literally down to hand size and arm length. And there's no question if a guy has longer arms, it gives him an ability, especially as a defender, to knock down balls. But if he doesn't have the mindset, doesn't have the instincts, doesn't line up right, doesn't know his plays, his arms aren't going to be long enough to make the play because he's going to be out of position. What do you say to those people, being undersized, that allows you to be successful regardless of your measurables?
I think measurables are just becoming more and more overrated. You look at the past Heisman winner, how tall is he? Not very tall, 5'9", 5'8". I'm not sure. You look at Aaron Donald, best defensive player in the league right now. Mm-hmm. Not very tall for his position. But, the big thing about measurables is they don't matter, because you can squat 600 pounds. You can run a 4.2. But if you can't catch the ball, it doesn't matter. If you can squat at 600 pounds, but you can't block anybody or stop anybody coming rushing the quarterback, it doesn't matter. You can jump out the gym, but if you can't track the ball and jump at the right time to get it at its highest point, it doesn't matter. So you're finding that all these guys that, have these measurables but necessarily aren't great football players, they're having some troubles. And that's why there's a difference between being a great athlete and being a great football player. And when you get both, that's when you really hit the home run.
Well, you don't have anything to be ashamed of. You've got a lot of wheels. What are you hoping to run at your pro day in the 40?
I'm trying to run 4.3. So I'm trying to get in the 4.3s. Break the stereotype, show everybody that I can run, and make them go back and watch my film and be like, wow, this kid really is moving.
That's awesome. I hope you do. How do you see yourself as a rookie? Do you see yourself being a Pro Bowler? Do you see yourself leading a team in receptions? Do you see yourself participating on special teams? Do you see yourself being a practice squad guy? Do you have any visual of what you're thinking?
Well, I'm chasing Rookie of the Year every single day. It doesn't stop there. I'm trying to lead the team in receptions. I'm trying to, be a leader as much as you can as a rookie. I'm trying to earn the trust of my head coach, OC, quarterback coach, wide receiver coach, quarterback, all the other players on the team. And I'm trying to be a go-to guy, a guy that when they need something to happen, they need some help, they're going to, call my number. It's some may say it's high expectations, but, it's what you dream about. I haven't achieved a lot of the accolades, through my time. And I watched the Odell Beckham Jr. interview where, he was talking about, well, he wasn't, this or that, or he didn't get the number 1 overall pick, so he was going to be Rookie of the Year. It's the same thing. You got to work and strive for the moon. That's just what I'm planning to do.
A lot of players talk about flow, being in the zone. What is your mindset like when you're in the flow?
The flow is when, preparation and opportunity meet. It's the same thing I said earlier with the ordinary things in an extraordinary way. To be able to prepare and be ready for everything in a subconscious level and be able to execute it at the highest level in an extraordinary way is something that really separates those players that seem to always be in the zone and the flow. being in that zone and being in that flow is all about how you prepare, how you take care of your body, how you're ready. And then, honestly, if you make that play 100 times in practice, you're going to make it in the game. If you're ready, if you're getting open 100 times in practice, you're going to be open 100 times in the game. That's just how it works. So, it's the preparation and then the opportunity meeting. That's what I think the flow is.
Well, I want to thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to this episode of Pro Mindset. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. 5 stars, of course. You can follow us on our website, ProMindsetPodcast.com, or on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Pro Mindset Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you the next time.